There comes a time in every life when we must ask ourselves, what is guiding us? What is truly at the center of our decisions, our desires, our dreams? Too many live with self at the center, chasing after wealth, people, or recognition, yet still feeling empty inside. But the truth is clear. When you put God first, everything begins to align, everything begins to shift, and life takes on a new meaning. Putting God first is not just a suggestion. It is the foundation of a life of purpose and power. It means making Him the priority above every ambition, above every relationship, above every comfort. It is to say, Lord, before I look to anyone else, before I trust in myself, I trust in you. And when you do this, you unlock a life that no amount of effort on your own could ever create. First, there is the principle of priority. Life becomes chaotic when the order is wrong. When money comes before God, greed will rule. When pleasure comes before God, emptiness will follow. But when God comes first, everything else falls into its rightful place. Your decisions gain clarity, your relationships gain stability, your path gains direction. Seek Him first, and you will see how the confusion of life begins to clear. Second, there is the power of surrender. Too often we hold tightly to our plans, fearing that if we let go, we will lose control. But control is an illusion. True strength is found in surrendering to the one who holds the universe in His hands. When you put God first, you are saying, Lord, take the wheel of my life. And in doing so, you find peace that no human plan could ever give. You begin to walk in freedom instead of fear, in trust instead of anxiety. Third, there is the blessing of obedience. When God is first, obedience is no longer heavy, but joyful. Every yes to Him becomes a seed planted into your future. And those seeds will always bring a harvest, blessings in places you never expected, provision in times of lack, miracles in moments of impossibility. Obedience is the key that unlocks divine favor. Finally, there is the transformation of perspective. When God takes first place, your eyes change. You no longer see obstacles as dead ends. You see them as opportunities for God's glory. You no longer fear tomorrow. You trust the one who already holds it. You no longer live in survival mode. You live in victory because your life is anchored in eternity. Beloved, hear this. Putting God first is not just about religion. It is about relationship. It is not about rules. It is about alignment. It is not about loss. It is about gain. For when God is first, nothing can truly be against you. So today, make the choice. Choose Him first when you wake up in the morning. Choose Him first in your plans, in your relationships, in your battles. And as you do, watch what happens. Watch the peace that floods your heart, the doors that open before you, the strength that rises within you. Watch your life change, because when you put God first, everything changes. When we speak of putting God first, we are really speaking of the principle of priority. And this principle is one of the most powerful forces in all of life. Everything in creation follows order. The sun rises before the day begins. The seed is planted before the harvest comes. And the foundation must be laid before the building can stand. Whenever the order is broken, chaos follows. But whenever the order is honored, stability is secured. In the same way, life only flourishes when God is given the first place, because He was never meant to be added as an afterthought. He was meant to be the beginning of everything. The moment you make Him first in your time, your trust, and your choices, you will begin to see how alignment brings transformation. Think for a moment about the way many people live their lives. They place career as their first pursuit, chasing after promotion, recognition, and wealth as if those things can provide lasting satisfaction. Others put relationships first, hoping that another human being will fill the emptiness inside. Still others put their own desires first, pursuing comfort, pleasure, or control. Yet at the end of the day, so many still feel restless, unfulfilled, and empty. Why? Because the order is wrong. Nothing and no one was designed to occupy the place that belongs only to God. When anything else is placed at the center, it becomes an idol, and idols always disappoint. The principle of priority says that when God is first, everything else will find its rightful place. It does not mean life will suddenly be without challenge, but it does mean life will no longer be without direction. Decisions that once felt impossible will become clear because His wisdom begins to guide you. Relationships that once felt heavy will begin to stabilize because His love teaches you how to love others rightly. Goals that once felt meaningless will take on eternal weight because now they are aligned with His purpose. Order brings clarity, and clarity brings peace. When you put God first, you are acknowledging that He is the source, not the supplement. Too many treat Him as a backup plan, a last resort when everything else fails, but the principle of priority says that He is not the one you run to at the end. He is the one you begin with. Before you make a decision, you ask Him. Before you build your plans, you seek Him. Before you place trust in anyone else, you trust Him. This kind of alignment removes confusion because it keeps your heart anchored in truth instead of drifting with the waves of circumstances. Imagine a compass pointing north. As long as north is fixed, every direction can be determined. But if the compass loses its alignment, you will wander in circles, lost and weary. In the same way, putting God first keeps your compass steady. He becomes your true north, and suddenly the distractions and lies of the world cannot pull you off course. The principle of priority protects you from wasting your energy on what does not matter, and gives you the courage to invest your life in what will last forever. This principle also carries a promise. When you seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, all these things will be added to you. The world teaches you to chase the additions, money, status, possessions, and only then look for meaning. But heaven teaches the opposite. Pursue God first, and the rest will follow in the right measure, at the right time, in the right way. When you honor the order, you no longer have to chase blessings because blessings begin to chase you. You no longer live in anxiety about tomorrow because tomorrow is already secure in the hands of the one you have placed first today. Putting God first is not always easy because it demands trust. It means saying no to the temptation of self-dependence, the illusion that you can build life on your own strength. It means resisting the urge to make people your savior, to let possessions define your worth, or to let fear dictate your choices. But every time you choose Him above all else, you are planting seeds of stability that will bear fruit for years to come. You may not see the harvest immediately, but you will feel the peace, you will sense the direction, and in time you will witness the transformation. There is a freedom that comes when God is first. You no longer have to pretend to have it all figured out because you are leaning on the one who does. You no longer have to fear the future because you know who holds it. You no longer live in constant disappointment because your hope is anchored in something eternal, not temporary. And this freedom is not a fleeting feeling. It is a foundation that cannot be shaken, no matter what storms may come. So the principle of priority is not just a lesson, it is a lifestyle. It is waking up each day and deciding that before the world gets your attention, God will. It is choosing to put His voice above the noise, His will above your own, His purpose above every other pursuit. And as you do, you will watch how alignment creates transformation. The confusion will begin to clear, the weight will begin to lift, and the path will begin to shine before you. For when you put God first, you honor the order of creation, and in doing so, you invite heaven's order into your life. That is the power of priority, and that is the beginning of true change. To put God first is to live in the power of surrender. Surrender is not weakness, though the world will tell you it is. The world teaches that to win you must fight harder, to achieve you must work longer, to control you must grasp tighter. But in the kingdom of God, strength is found not in clinging, but in releasing. The very act of letting go of your plans, your pride, and your control is the doorway to peace and the entrance to victory. Surrender means you recognize that your wisdom is limited, your strength is temporary, and your understanding is incomplete. But His wisdom is infinite, His strength is unshakable, and His ways are higher than your own. So many live their lives bound by the illusion of control, holding on to plans that never work out and worrying about things they can never change. They spend their days in constant striving, always chasing, always reaching, yet never truly arriving. Their hearts grow weary, their souls restless, because they are trying to carry a burden that was never meant for them to carry. But when you put God first by surrendering to Him, you trade that burden for His peace. You stop living as if the weight of the world rests on your shoulders and start living with the assurance that it rests on His. Surrender is not the end of your power. It is the beginning of His power working through you. Think about a river flowing. When you resist the current, you exhaust yourself, fighting against the very force that could carry you. But when you surrender to the flow, you move with ease, carried by something greater than yourself. Life is the same way. As long as you resist God's direction, you will find yourself drained and disappointed. But when you surrender, you discover the ease of His grace and the strength of His guidance. Surrender does not erase effort. It transforms it. Instead of striving in your own strength, you begin to work with His strength, and the difference is like night and day. There is a reason why surrender leads to transformation. When you hold on to control, you are limited by your own understanding, but when you surrender, you open the door for divine wisdom to lead you. You might think you know what is best for your life, but how many times has your best plan failed you? How many times has your dream led to disappointment? Surrender means saying, Lord, I trust you even when I don't understand. I trust you even when the path is not clear. I trust you even when letting go feels hard. That level of trust is the soil where miracles grow, because miracles are never born in human control. They are born in divine surrender. When you surrender, you also experience a freedom that striving can never give. Striving ties your worth to your performance, your identity to your achievements, your peace to your possessions. But surrender unties those chains. It teaches you that your worth is in who God says you are, not in what you can produce. It anchors your identity in His love, not in the approval of people. It gives you peace that is not based on what you hold, but on who holds you. This is why so many who seem successful in the eyes of the world are still miserable inside, because they have everything except surrender. And this is why so many who may look simple in the eyes of the world radiate joy, because they have given everything to God. Surrender is also the secret to overcoming fear. Fear thrives in the soil of control because when you are holding everything in your own hands, you know deep inside that those hands are weak. Fear reminds you of your limitations. Fear whispers, what if you fail? What if you lose? What if you cannot handle it? But surrender silences fear with trust. It says, yes, I may fail, but God never fails. Yes, I may lose, but He will restore. Yes, I may not handle it, but He is more than able. Surrender is the answer to fear, because it shifts your confidence from yourself to the one who cannot be shaken. And when you truly surrender, you will find that God begins to rewrite your story in ways you could never have imagined. He takes the broken pieces you release and creates a masterpiece. He takes the dreams you let go of and gives you a vision far greater. He takes the battles you hand over and turns them into victories you could not win alone. Surrender is not about losing your life. It is about finding the life you were always meant to live. It is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the story God intended. This is why surrender is power. It looks like letting go, but it is actually holding on to the only one who will never fail. It looks like weakness, but it is actually the gateway to strength. It looks like giving up, but it is actually the only way to truly rise. And once you taste the peace that comes with surrender, you will never want to go back to the exhausting illusion of control. So today, let your prayer be simple. Lord, I place you first. I surrender my plans, my fears, my desires, my future. I choose to let go so that you may lead. And watch what happens when you do. Watch how the anxiety lifts. Watch how the doors open. Watch how the storms lose their power over you. Because when you put God first through surrender, you step into a life where His power carries you, His wisdom guides you, and His peace surrounds you. And that is the kind of life no striving could ever achieve. Obedience is not a word that many people love to hear. To the human heart, it often sounds restrictive, like chains that limit freedom or rules that kill joy. But in the eyes of God, obedience is not bondage. It is the pathway to blessing. When you put God first, obedience stops being a heavy burden and becomes a joyful response to His love. Every act of obedience is like a seed planted into the soil of your life, and every seed carries the promise of a harvest. You may not always see the results immediately, but obedience always produces fruit, because God never overlooks the sacrifice of a surrendered heart. Think about the way obedience works. When a child listens to the voice of a parent who loves them, that child is protected from harm, guided toward wisdom, and shaped for a better future. The child may not understand why the parent says no to certain things or yes to others, but the love behind those instructions is real. In the same way, when you obey God, you are choosing to trust that His commands are not meant to restrict you, but to protect you and lead you into life. His ways are not designed to keep you from joy, but to secure a joy that cannot be stolen. His instructions are not to rob you of freedom, but to anchor you in true freedom. Obedience is not about rules. It is about relationship. It says, "Because I love you and trust you, I choose to walk in your way." The blessing of obedience is that it places you in alignment with heaven. Many people live in constant frustration because they are walking against the flow of God's design, and they wonder why their efforts never seem to prosper. It is like planting seeds on rocky ground and expecting a harvest. But when you obey, you plant in the soil God has prepared, and in due season the harvest comes. It may come in unexpected ways, but it always comes because obedience never returns empty. Your obedience today may open the door to favor tomorrow. Your obedience in a small decision may unlock a breakthrough in a place you never imagined. Every time you say yes to God, you position yourself under the flow of His blessing. Obedience is also the key to miracles. Throughout history, miracles have always followed obedience. The waters parted when the people stepped forward in faith. The walls fell when the shout was given at God's command. The jars of oil multiplied when they were filled in obedience to the instruction. Time and again, it was not human strength that created the miracle, but human obedience that invited divine power. Miracles are not manufactured by effort. They are birthed in obedience, and the same is true today. When you obey even when it does not make sense, you give God the space to do what only He can do. There is also a blessing of peace in obedience. Disobedience breeds guilt, shame, and restlessness, but obedience brings a deep assurance that you are walking where you are meant to walk. Even if the path is difficult, you know you are in the will of God, and that knowledge alone is a source of strength. It is better to be in the middle of a storm with God than in calm waters without Him, because obedience anchors you to His presence, and where His presence is, peace follows. Some may fear obedience because they think it will cost too much. And yes, obedience does cost something. It may cost you comfort, opportunities, or the approval of people. But the blessing it brings is always greater than the price you pay. You cannot outgive God. Every time you give something up in obedience, He gives back something far richer, far deeper, far more lasting. What looks like loss in the moment becomes gain in the light of eternity. And often, even in this life, obedience opens doors of provision and favor that nothing else could unlock. The blessing of obedience is not just for you, but for those around you. Your obedience can become the channel through which blessings flow to your family, your community, even generations after you. When you walk in obedience, you create a ripple effect that touches lives you may never meet. Just as the disobedience of one can bring trouble to many, the obedience of one can bring blessing to many. You may never fully know the impact of your obedience, but heaven records it, and eternity will reveal it. What makes obedience truly powerful is that it is rooted in love. If obedience is only about fear or duty, it will eventually grow heavy. But when obedience flows out of love for God, it becomes natural, even joyful. Love transforms obedience from a demand into a desire. It is no longer I have to obey, but I want to obey because I know the one who asks is faithful and good. Love makes obedience a privilege instead of a burden, and that is why love and obedience cannot be separated. The greater your love for God, the greater your desire to obey Him. So if you want to see change in your life, do not despise obedience. Do not see it as something to resist, but as the key to unlock the life you are longing for. When God speaks, say yes. When He instructs, follow. When He leads, trust. Because every act of obedience is a seed, and every seed will bring a harvest in time. The blessing of obedience is real, and it is waiting for those who put God first. When you put God first, something extraordinary begins to happen, not only in your circumstances, but in your perspective. The way you see life begins to shift. What once looked like a dead end begins to look like an open door. What once seemed like an impossible mountain begins to appear as a stepping stone to greater strength. What once filled your heart with fear begins to stir faith inside of you. This is the transformation of perspective, and it is one of the greatest gifts God gives to those who make Him the center of their lives. Perspective shapes everything. Two people can walk through the exact same trial, yet one will collapse in despair while the other rises in hope. What makes the difference? It is not the trial itself, but the lens through which it is viewed. When you see through the eyes of self, the eyes of the world, or the eyes of fear, everything feels overwhelming. But when you see through the eyes of God, every challenge becomes a testimony waiting to happen. Every setback becomes a setup for something greater, and every season of pain becomes an opportunity for growth. The problem is not always the problem. The problem is often how we see the problem, and putting God first transforms how we see. When God is not first, your perspective will always be limited by human understanding. You will see obstacles as final, storms as destructive, and losses as the end of your story. But when God is first, your eyes are lifted to eternity. You begin to realize that what looks final in the natural is never final in the hands of God. You begin to understand that storms may shake you, but they will not break you, because the one who calms the seas is in your boat. You begin to see that loss is not the end, but the soil in which God plants something new. This perspective does not come from positive thinking or self-motivation. It comes only from alignment with the heart of God. This transformation of perspective is why people who walk closely with God carry an unshakable peace even in the darkest seasons. They are not blind to reality. They are simply seeing a greater reality. They do not deny the storm, but they know the storm is under His command. They do not deny the pain, but they know the pain has a purpose. They do not deny the struggle, but they know the struggle is shaping strength inside of them. This perspective allows them to keep moving when others would give up, to keep hoping when others would despair, to keep praising when others would complain. It is not because life is easier for them, but because their vision has been changed by putting God first. When you put God at the center, you begin to see people differently as well. Those who once seemed impossible to forgive begin to look like souls in need of grace. Those who once irritated or wounded you begin to appear as opportunities to show love. Those who once felt like enemies begin to be seen through the eyes of compassion. Perspective shifts when God is first, and suddenly relationships that were heavy become lighter, because you are no longer looking through the eyes of pride, but through the eyes of love. This transformation heals families, restores friendships, and builds unity where division once thrived. Your perspective on yourself also changes. Without God first, you will either live in pride, thinking too highly of yourself, or in shame, thinking too little. But when God is first, you begin to see yourself the way He sees you, not perfect, but loved, not flawless, but chosen, not strong on your own, but empowered by His Spirit. This balanced perspective frees you from the trap of comparison, because you realize your worth is not measured against anyone else. You are who God made you to be, and that is enough. Putting Him first transforms your self-image from insecurity to identity, from striving to security, from fear to confidence. And this new perspective even touches the way you see the future. Without God, the future can feel like a constant source of anxiety, uncertain, unstable, and frightening. But when you put Him first, the unknown is no longer terrifying, because you know who holds tomorrow. You stop obsessing over what might happen, and you start resting in the One who has already written your days. This does not mean the future will always be easy, but it means you walk into it with confidence, because your steps are guided, your life is covered, and your destiny is secure. Perspective is everything, and the transformation that comes from putting God first cannot be measured. It changes how you think, how you feel, how you respond, and how you live. It does not remove trials, but it changes how you face them. It does not erase pain, but it gives purpose to your pain. It does not eliminate storms, but it reminds you that storms are temporary while His promises are eternal. This is why the enemy fights so hard to distract you, to pull your attention away from God, to cloud your perspective with fear and doubt. Because the enemy knows that once your vision is transformed, his power over you is broken. So if you want to see life differently, do not simply pray for new circumstances. Pray for new eyes. Pray for the eyes that come when God is first. Because with those eyes, you will walk with courage in places where others tremble. You will stand in faith when others collapse in fear, and you will shine with hope when others are lost in despair. This is the blessing of a transformed perspective, and it is reserved for those who put Him above all else. Beloved, the world will always look dark if you see it through the wrong lens. But when you make God your first pursuit, your first love, and your first trust, He will open your eyes to see what others cannot see. You will see possibility where others see impossibility. You will see purpose where others see pain. You will see victory where others see defeat. And once your perspective is transformed, your life will never be the same again.